to the Safety Doc Podcast with your charismatic host and prominent safety expert, Dr. David Perrodin. Be entertained and informed as the Safety Doc discusses both best and bizarre practices in safety preparation and crisis response. The truth will keep you safe. Follow Dr. Perrodin on Twitter at SafetyPhD.
Hi, everybody. This is David, and welcome to the Safety Doc Podcast. This is podcast number 51, and today we are going to focus on the Equifax credit breach, what to do. I'm going to give you some insight on what the Safety Doc is going to do, and just in general, just a bigger picture of how this whole credit bureau thing works, because there's a lot of mystery behind it. You know, people say, well, it's a government extension of the government. It's not an extension of the government. And why these things exist, and actually that they're traded on the stock markets, you can invest. And the fact that some of these agencies have done really well. So it's like, you know, who are they really surveying? And the fact that Equifax basically had, what was it, a music major in charge of security, and everything got wiped out. Like everything got wiped out. So what does this mean for you? What does it mean for me? What does it mean for our parents, for family members and people we care about, and what should we be telling them? So I'm going to get into that in just a little bit here on the Safety Doc Podcast. A few things. One is the decor in the background. I've ordered new signage. So we do have some exclusive sponsorship for the show. I'd like to thank Sprigeo, S-P-R-I-G-E-O, Sprigeo.com out of Santa Barbara, California, the nation's leader in school safety reporting systems, online safety reporting systems, and not only school, but now looking very seriously at bringing that level of safety reporting to entire communities. So Sprigeo.com. And also thank you to the 405 Media, John Grant and the 405 Media out of Los Angeles. You can listen to this show daily at 2 p.m. PST, followed by Aaron Clary, Captain Capitalism, and the Clary Podcast. But 2 p.m. PST for the Safety Doc Podcast. We do have a new show every week. So please, go in and you can follow the archives through the 405 Media. You can go into Apple Podcast. I'm on SoundCloud. Please follow me on Twitter at SafetyPhD. Follow me on Twitter at SafetyPhD also. You can find me on Stitcher and Blueberry and pretty much anywhere you throw a rock, the Safety Doc's going to be there. So I do appreciate that. And all of these shows are on YouTube. So I'm pretty rare in that regard of making all of the podcasts available on YouTube and then also on MP3 format via SoundCloud or Apple Podcasts or whatever it might be. So we did have some shows that ran long, beyond an hour. I mean, that's the time slot I have on the 405 Media. But now we've kind of been getting back into the hour slot. I like shows. I like to go through and look at what people have posted, in my favorite shows, like readilyrandom.com, awareness-podcast.com. Aaron Clary, just some of my favorite shows, Sustainable Living podcast. Give a few shout outs there, folks. And I like sometimes shows that are a little bit longer. Like if I have a longer drive or I'm going to be, involved in some task where I want that playing in the background. And I know I'm going to be, out in the garage, cleaning my car or working on the concrete in my garage or something. And so I'm going to download some of the longer podcasts that I'm going to be out there and really able to soak in. So I do appreciate the long podcast, in addition to the short podcast. But, for me, if a podcast is like less than 30 minutes, I typically don't download it because I listen while I commute, and I don't like having to kind of flip through and find, podcasts. And I have a strategy, though. I'm going to try this. I have a new strategy. I'm thinking of every week when I commute of just taking all of my favorite podcasts I download for that week and then import them into one file, like just one after another, and then render that as an MP3. So it's just one continuous file. So it might be like, November 15th, 2017 for that week. And it's like all of them. It'd be like one massive file that would just keep going. So I don't know, just thinking of that. But, yes, so the signage in the back is going to change. I did order a 405 Media sign and then a large Spragueo sign. And then also I'm going to be moving a few things in the back. I do work with lawyers and with major companies and so forth. So to really have the dumbbells in the background doesn't give the the professional image anymore for where the studio needs to be. Now all of the Packer stuff that when I initially set the studio up back in 2002, that's kind of been removed out of here, and it is much more of an adult studio. Right now, it doesn't look like something that a teenager or college student put together. But I am going to be moving that to a different location. So what you're going to see in the back is basically the full credenza, which will have books on it. And then the two signs, one will be Spragueo, and the other sign will be the 405 Media. So my Wisconsin Badger sign, even though they're ranked number 5 in the college football polls right now, undefeated, 10-0, that's going to be gone. So my Badger sign will just be moved to a different part down here of my studio, but will not be showing up in the background. So a few things. One is, hey, got a haircut tonight. So if you're watching this show on YouTube, or if you're listening to this podcast and you're like, I want to check out the Safety Doc's haircut, please, this is I like this. This is my dragnet look. Okay, I absolutely love short haircuts. It's a little weird though in Wisconsin, because once winter comes around, I can even notice, like I will definitely, I shave on Sundays and then kind of let the stubble grow out. I never have like a beard, although like I used to kind of. But once you get in, that clean shaven chin and that hair, shortened down and you get outside for a run or something, you could definitely, feel that you've lost a little bit of insulation. It gets a little bit cooler out there. Now in summer, that's awesome, on a bike and on heat and sweat and all of that stuff. But in winter, yeah. So I have contemplated letting the beard grow back. I did have a trimmer where it would only go like so long, like a quarter of an inch, and then you just trim it every day and things like that. And I kind of liked that look a little bit. And everybody, this time of year you can pass it off in Wisconsin pretty easily. Like it's hunting season, right? Are you a hunter? No, but who knows? So I'm going back on this whole Equifest, not Equifest. I think Equifest was an investment. Equifax. So anyway, we got the big three: Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion are the big three credit agencies. And Equifax is the one, that came out in, what was it, May through June and said, hey, by the way, like everything we had was harvested by hackers and it's all gone. It's all gone. Social security number, everything is all gone. So, life as you know it, your information is it. And I have a friend who is, in the computer business, and basically, like in networking, basically said like all of our information is just ubiquitous across the dark web. I mean, it's all out there, and it's just a matter of prioritization from the hackers if they go after you or not. And I think I mentioned this once before. I think his theory was that they will basically kind of Google your name and start to see how many hits come up. And they kind of will go after people who have more hits because they're figuring, well, this person has a bigger social media profile, a bigger media profile in general. They've probably done more. They're probably more established. They have more resources, more assets, more things to go after, and maybe more things that they've been involved in that they won't be able to monitor everything. So what that means for me, I don't know. They Google me. They're like, hey, this guy has like 51 podcasts. Does that equate to like a big bank account? I'm like, not through the podcast. No. He's very, very minor celebrity status now with I think we're up to 1,528 Twitter followers, although it varies. Like someday it was up over I had like 1,530, and then it dipped down a little bit and then it came back. Now back in March, we went to Disney, and I remember I was very excited at Disney. I checked my laptop, and I had just crossed 300 Twitter followers. So now, over 1,500, and the show continues to grow an audience, and doing very well in the downloads for the MP3s, listening in the audio format, and remarkably well in video. Like, people seem to prefer sometimes video. Video will outpace audio at times. So again, I think I'm a very contextual person. So even when I do professional phone conferences with lawyers, when I serve as an expert witness, or with businesses, when I work with them on contract work regarding, different user interface things and data analysis and stuff like that. This is all kind of side stuff here. It comes out of the studio down here. Another reason studio's got to step it up a little bit. And the paneling, though, is not going to be replaced. The paneling is vintage. But yeah, it's pretty crazy. It's pretty crazy. So, I want to talk about some of my early jobs. So I'm going back and thinking, the early days when credit hacking, identity theft, things like that really wasn't that big of an issue. So when I was about 9 years old, I started to mow lawns, and I had a network of lawns that I would mow, and I would use my parents had two mowers. One was a Toro, it was a push mower, and one was this old, I don't even know what the brand was. It was yellow, and this thing had to be like from the 60s, and it was loud. Back then you didn't wear the headphones. Now, last 20 years I've always worn, the protective head dampen, I don't know, it's not headphones. What are head muffs? Ear muffs? They're not ear muffs. I don't know. Sound protection. But, back then you didn't. And this thing, and you had to mix the gas and oil together, which was always a science experiment. Yeah, we had two mowers, and I don't know why, but the yellow one was the one you used, like, if you were cutting around. We had some pine trees in the back, and basically, that's the one that would take the brunt of the most horrible mowing job. And then we had one that was a little bit better, which was a Toro, but they're, again, both push mowers. And I think we had a weed whacker too, and you had to mix up the oil and gas for that thing. And I don't know, I don't remember much about that. I think it worked okay, but I mowed lawns, and I used our mowers. So my parents, basically allowed me to use our mowers. And I would charge, the neighbors, and I don't know. I think my parents never made me pay for the gas or anything on those. I think it was just more or less like the work ethic type thing. So anyway, it was pretty cool, and most of our neighborhood, I brought this up earlier in a podcast, like most of our neighborhood, all right, quick break here. Like, for those of you watching the show, there's no way my shoulders will ever be straight. Like, someone could stand behind me with a level. And I've got the arm settings at two different heights. I don't know what it is. Honestly, I can't figure it out, but it's not that big of a distraction until I bring it up to you right now. And you're like, Dave, now it's like totally, like, it's bothering me. I don't know what's up. So, but anyway, like, I would mow, and I gotta, after you get a haircut, you got like kind of the hair that gets in the shirt. I kind of got that going on. So no, I'm not trying to do like the Hugh Hefner look here. All right. And I do have a sport coat on and things like that, but, and I do need to figure out this mic. I'm not sure I like the mic in front of me, although the mic's been recording, really well. I'm really satisfied with the mic and the boom arm setup here. But it's not as convenient as what I thought it was going to be. Like, I thought I'd be able to type a little bit more and things like that. It's better. It's better than what was sitting on the table, like in the earlier podcast. So I had a new listener, and he's like, yeah, I definitely noticed, like, in the last 25 podcasts, those are like significantly better than the first 25. I'm like, yeah. I got a lot of help. First of all, I upgraded my equipment, but I got a lot of help from Hector Solis from Typical Daddy Podcast, also of the Awareness Podcast, and helping me in setting up my technology and also the software to go with it. And Auphonic software, Auphonic, Auphonic is great if you're a podcaster. You can go in and check them out. And I think it's like $80 $9 for a lifetime license or something like that. And they just came out with an update this summer, but it's really great. Like what it does is it takes your podcast and it brings it up to industry standard. So, and you can kind of tweak with that a little bit, but if you're not loud enough, it'll bring it up to a loudness, and it just really cleans up the audio. Now, I mean, you have to have pretty good audio coming in, but it's so good. The software is just wonderful. It's made a big difference. And I'm waiting to get an H4n Zoom recorder, so I can do a little better field recording audio. I don't do a lot of field recording. That's the thing. Like, to buy a used one is probably going to be at least $125, including shipping. And then you run the risk, even if the person writes like the super great narrative of like only used it 3 times, like it's been treated great. Like you never know what you're getting. So for an extra $50, you could go and buy something new. But I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I want to invest like $200 in like a portable audio system. This would have been great back when I was doing my dissertation and I needed audio, and I had this little handheld Sony recorder, which I got for like $40. And honestly, that thing worked like really, really well. But it reminds me of when I was in high school and you had a little boom box that you put up in your locker, in your football locker, and there was no bass. I mean, it was all just like tinny treble. I mean, there was no bass in it back then. So this thing did the job. Like it worked really well. It recorded clear enough. And for the money, it actually did a phenomenal job. And then, I got it to my transcriber and all of that. But it's not like something I could use on a regular basis for going out in the field and doing interviews. And that's what I want to do. I want to start doing some more interviews. So I want to get a Zoom at least where I can set it up on a tripod, like on a table, and then snake the cord out to my webcam, which does take audio in, and then try to improve the audio that way. But again, it's one of these things where like I don't want to invest a lot in it because I'm looking through like 51 shows and I probably only did 6-7 shows where I've interviewed somebody. And the one or the 2 that were really pretty wild were the ones where Preston Rice and I were out in the field and he was doing like demonstrations with his drone. And I think the audio kind of turned out pretty good for that. The dub over wasn't the greatest, but the audio was pretty good with the camcorder. But I don't know if I would have had like a great system for that anyway. So, I'm looking at some of these systems, and one came up, and I probably should have bid on it. It had like lapel mics, but then I'm thinking, well, like that wouldn't have worked out in the field with, obviously when I was doing that. So I don't know. I'm going to come up with something. I do have some cash to put into, upgrading some of these systems, but it's just I'm a little hesitant. As Captain Capitalism, Aaron Clary. I mean, you're probably, I think, and you record maybe some of this stuff on your phone or whatever, and in addition to your studio. I just don't want to put a lot into the field reporting as far as like the audio. Because I do have the camcorder, and if you get it pretty close, it's pretty good. You can kind of jack the volume, and I've listened to podcasts where people podcast and they record in their cars, and to me, it's pretty good. I mean, unless you have something absolutely crazy in the background, like as long as you know like one guy, I was listening to his podcast. My God, the guy was like he turned his blinker on through this 1 hour podcast. I mean, the blinker had to be on 50 minutes of the 1 hour podcast. I mean, I don't know. I'm like, did you? Like, were you broadcasting from a corn maze where you're left, right, left, right, right, left, right, right, left, right, right, right. I mean, it was just crazy. But, and we talk about the Crazy Doc. It's a crazy show, guys. Crazy show. But you're not the typical audience. You want to know this stuff, and I want to share it with you. I mean, this isn't rhetoric. I want to share it with you, help you out. So, yeah, Safety Doc Podcast is great stuff.
Thank you for tuning in to the Safety Doc Podcast with the nation's leading safety expert, Dr. David Perrodin, author, radio show host, university instructor, researcher, expert witness, and consultant. Powerful testimonials. Dr. Perrodin has a strong reputation as the go-to safety consultant, and he was still able to exceed our expectations. When we went looking for an expert in the field of crisis preparedness and prevention, David was the single person we pursued. Not easy stepping into the touchier subjects of life, but Dr. David pulls it off. Take a listen. Now, back to Dr. David Perodin and the Safety Doc Podcast.
And welcome back to the Safety Doc Podcast. So, when I was growing up, I had the jobs, we talked about mowing the lawn, and I also had the job, I don't know, at least I think I had jobs here, I got written down here. But yeah, I was mowing lawn. I was like 9, 10. And then I got in with a concrete factory. I was like 10. I was mowing lawn. I had this big lawnmower, like a lawn tractor. It was a tractor. I mean, it's big. And then I was mowing some properties that they owned. So they owned a few acre properties in town. Plus they owned some homes. So I was like doing like 3, 4 homes plus like 2, 3 properties. It was a pretty good gig. This mower was really impressive. And a few things with that. So I remember a couple things. One is like I was mowing. They didn't want you to mow the vacant fields very often. When I say fields, it'd be like a city block. And it was in the city. And I only grew up in a town of like 1,200 people. But, they're like, only mow this every 2, 3 weeks because, So I'd go and mow it. And one time I mowed it. And like I'd never realized like kids were playing baseball on this and they had left like a glove or two down. And I never saw it. Like it mowed over, all of a sudden, this glove was cut up and shot out the side of this thing. And I think the parents got kind of upset, but I was like, I never saw it. And then they're like, well, you should walk this thing before you mow it. I'm like, nobody does that. But I asked, there were 2 funny things. So one is like at that time, probably like 10 years old. And I'm going up and I would ask at the concrete office, a substantial concrete company. I'd say, I need to fill up the mower with gas. And the gas pump was like on the other side of this complex. So they'd be like, okay, we'll turn the pump on. I'd be like, all right. So by the time I drive over there, I try to fill up and the pump would be off. Then I'd have to drive back and they'd be like, well, we had the pump on. I'm like, well, this thing's not a race car for God's sakes. I'm like, it's a lawnmower. It's a riding lawnmower. Like you got to give me 3 to 4 minutes to get over there. And then, finally, that happened all the time. And then finally, gas up and it'd be fine. But one of the times, and I might have shared the story before, but it's worth sharing again. So I was like 10. And I kept asking for a bagger because on the 2 more formal properties, okay, now these are pretty wealthy folks. So like, they want everything mowed, but then there's a lot of stuff you have to mow by hand around the trees and you have to get the weed whacker, but you have to rake up anything that is extra grass or leaves. I mean, they really want their houses to look prestigious. And at the same time, I'm getting paid like $2.85 an hour, back in 1982 or whatever it was. But, it was okay. It was good money at the time. And actually I saved my money and I put it in bank CDs, that were paying at that time, like 10% or more. I mean, it's just crazy. But I asked for a leaf bagger to haul behind this thing. I kept asking, like, if you could just give me a leaf bagger. I mean, like, out of all the 3 luxury vehicles we had out in their driveways and their big mansions, I'm like, please just give me a leaf bagger. So they did. They got me a leaf bagger. And it was kind of a misty day. I'm going out to mow. And where the mower was, it was kept in a shed. So you had to get to the shed, which was at one of the properties. And right away, as soon as you get out of the shed, you had to climb up this hill. And there used to be a railroad that went through there. It was kind of a weird setup. But you went through, and I'm going up this hill, this grass-covered hill. And all of a sudden, like, I've got this leaf catcher behind me. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be so great because, like, all the leaves, debris will come in here. I can just take it. We had a city dump, which wasn't far away. You could take it down there and just, you could dump that stuff. But I'm going, and all of a sudden, the wheels start spinning on the tractor. And this is a big tractor. And I'm like, oh, no, this is bad. This is bad. This is really bad. So you have a couple things you got to think about instantly. One is like, okay, like, are you going to be able to make it up the hill? No. If not, like, can you back down the hill? And the third thing is, like, you can't really, you got to be careful. You can't lock on the brakes because then the front could come in. This thing could flip over on back onto you. I mean, so I'm thinking, okay, I'm not too far up the hill. I'm going to take this, and you couldn't just put it in neutral because it was starting to slide. So I'm starting to work my way back down the hill, and I'm making sure, like, very carefully that this bagger that's just hooked on the back, you know, as a pin, you know, just goes through and hooks on the hitch. And all of a sudden this thing jackknifes, and the mower, I mean, which is big, I mean, runs over this thing, snaps off the hitch and runs over. Not only runs over it, like flattens, destroys it. Like it's wiped out. Like this thing just crushes it. And then, I mean, it's like that Ralphie moment in A Christmas Story. I'm like, oh no. Oh no. So like I get down to the bottom, I go back up, and, you know, I'm like, I can fake it. I can bend it back, and no, this thing is gone. So what I did is I took it, and, you know, so I think the statute of limitations is off on this because, you know, I don't know what, 30 years ago plus, but, I took it and I put a rope around it. I mean, there was no other way. I just kind of took a rope around it, and I dragged it to the dump. So I'm dragging it across this blacktop road, and the thing's sparking, I mean, because it's just metal on metal metal on the road. I get it to the dump, and then I just heave it over the side. And then I never mentioned it after that. So they did ask me once, they're like, hey, wasn't there a bagger that, you know, that was down in the shed with this? And I'm like, yeah, you know, I did use it the one time, and that wasn't there after that. So the thing was, other people used in the family, this greater family, they would come up with their pickup trucks and stuff, and they would use this high-end, you know, mower and bagger accessory. So I'm thinking, you know, they thought somebody just like either took it and didn't bring it back or whatever. So I don't know. I guess maybe I should have fessed up, but I didn't want to lose my job back then. I got a job at a swimming pool when I was in high school. So I was playing like sports at high school, you know, the high school sports, and you get done with that. And I worked at a swimming pool as a program director. So I helped put the kids in the lessons. I wasn't a guard or anything, but in the lessons I would do the front desk. And it was a great job, actually. Had keys to the building, a brand new pool built in '88. I was hired for the original staff. I was the original staff. And, so it was pretty cool, and we used to do things called Weird Al Saturdays. I bring in my Weird Al cassettes. This thing had a cassette player, kind of like what a car would. Again, it's opened up in '88. It was a phenomenal, like double-length, Olympic-sized swimming pool in a community of like 1,200. It was donated by like a businessman, and it was phenomenal. And they had the super speaker system, so we would do Weird Al Saturdays because we had to open swim. Like now, you know, I'm sure it's all filled and they have a swim team and stuff like that. But for the start is largely open, like you just come in and swim. So we had our Weird Al Saturdays, and I would go through and bring in all my Weird Al cassettes, and that was popular. I mean, the kids loved it. So hey, let's get into this Equifax credit breach. So this is from Seena Grayson. Seena, S-E-E-N-A, Grayson, G-R-E-S-S-I-N, September 8th, 2017. She's an attorney for the Division of Consumer and Business Education, FTC. So here's what she wrote, okay? If you have a credit report, there's a good chance that you're one of the 143 million American consumers whose sensitive personal data was exposed in a data breach at Equifax, one of the nation's 3 major credit reporting agencies. Okay, so we have Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. Those are the 3. Okay, so 143 million Americans. I remember what we have, like, 350 million, but like a lot of these are kids, okay, you know, too. So 143 million. So basically most of the adult population, you know. Here are the facts according to Equifax. According to Equifax, here are the facts. So how much do you trust this? Anyway, the breach lasted from mid-May through July. How the hell does it go on from mid-May to July? I mean, how do you not employ some of the best anti-hacking people in the business when you have this type of information? And how do you not know, like, oh, we were breached like yesterday? What, and that this I don't get it. I don't get it. And I have friends that work in this business. I have friends who work in a capacity in military in this. So it's not like it's this foreign, and all these folks are saying too, like, this is ridiculous. This was crazy. And again, what it was head by what, like, person with a music major degree. Anyway, the hackers access people's names, social security numbers, birthdays, addresses, in some instances, driver's license numbers. They also stole credit card numbers for 209,000 people and dispute documents with personal identifying information for about 182,000. I don't know what the hell that is. 182,000 people. Hey, they also grabbed information from people from the UK and Canada too. Yay! Thanks, Equifax. Thanks. Just the facts, Equifax. Now, a few things. One is, and then we know that they sold stock. So there were 3 senior, and I've kind of got notes all over the place. I was going to type this up, but then I thought it would kind of stifle for the thoughts that are going to come to me in the moment. Like, this is pretty visceral. Like I'm pretty angry about this. So I wanted the feelings to kind of take this show where it needs to go. But there were 3 Equifax senior executives sold shares with about $8 million worth of shares within days that the company discovered the security breach. And they were all cleared. They did an investigation, and the last couple weeks are cleared. So even though, like, you sold all the stock after you knew about this, you sell the stock. It's like, no, it was okay. Of course it's not okay. And there's not a fine or anything that you keep your job and you sell your stock. I mean, just talk about corruption. So, okay. So are you unnerved by the massive Equifax breach? So the breach lasted from mid-May to mid-July, we talked about. But, the question now comes up to, do you freeze your credit or don't you freeze your credit? That's what we're getting at right now. So people don't really know what that means. You can go to, it's called Value Penguin. I am going to link this. I'll write this out in the description. I will put it explicitly in the blog post with a link, but it's valuepenguin.com. Actually, it's excellent. You can go in, it'll show you every single state, and it'll say, here's what it costs to lock your credit at the 3 agencies. And those 3 agencies, again, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. Here's how much it's going to cost you to lock your credit. When we talk about lock your credit, it basically means that nobody can take out credit cards in your name, loans in your name, all of that. It shuts it down, turns the light off. And here's what it'll cost. But here's also the deal. It will also cost you this much every time you unlock those credit reporting agencies. So the default, okay, the key here is that the default is open. The default is that these are open. So these 3 agencies, the default is that they are open. So your data is vulnerable. That it's not closed. And even like trying to close Equifax is almost impossible, because trying to get through to the company, you can go online and do this and look at people who have copied tweets or copied responses. Like, it's not easy. I mean, they're getting inundated. It's not easy. And then you get a PIN that you have to try to remember and protect and things like that. And I think Equifax was giving out like the same PIN to everybody if they, for the same day, or it was just ridiculous. But so, oh my goodness. Okay. So the basic benefit of putting a lock on your credit is that if fraudster attempts to take out a loan or get credit using your personal information, the lender will be unable to check your credit score or history and generally won't approve the application. So that's the benefit.
Thank you for tuning in to the Safety Doc Podcast with the nation's leading safety expert, Dr. David Perrodin, author, radio show host, university instructor, researcher, expert witness, and consultant. Powerful testimonials. Dr. Perrodin has a strong reputation as the go-to safety consultant, and he was still able to exceed our expectations. When we went looking for an expert in the field of crisis preparedness and prevention, David was the single person we pursued. Not easy stepping into the touchier subjects of life, but Dr. David pulls it off. Take a listen. Now, back to Dr. David Perrodin and the Safety Doc Podcast.
All right, thank you for returning for the Safety Doc Podcast. All right, you tried to run out the door. Nope, we got you back. That was your time, though, to get your popcorn or your Doritos or your Cheetos or your Mountain Dew or your Pepsi or your Shasta, whatever it takes. Here's the deal, though, okay? So I think there's this misconception, and there was for me. Like, I'm like, why are these agencies there? So the origins of credit bureaus, they were created to help lenders and creditors decide who were the potential customers that were credit worthy. So remember, decades ago, maybe 30s, 40s. I mean, these agencies start to come into play. 40s, 50s, 60s. Credit bureaus are helping lenders and creditors as the banking industry grew. Probably more after World War II. Banking industry grew. Who's credit worthy? So they would, reporting to these agencies was voluntary. So mostly you had if you were paying your taxes, if you were paying your water bill, if you were paying, other things like that. So those are being reported in. So it's voluntary to report in. Now it's interesting because I wasn't able through my research to really find out like what the carrot is if I'm with Macy's or whatever company and I'm reporting into Equifax. Like, what's the carrot for me to do that? There's got to be some incentive out there that I'm not aware of. So it might surprise you. It surprised me. It surprised the Safety Doc. It totally surprised Safety Doc. It might surprise you that none of the credit bureaus are federally, none are federal agencies. None are federal agencies. In fact, they have no government affiliation whatsoever. None. Okay, let's slow this down. Go over it again. It might surprise you to learn that none of the credit bureaus. So again, we are talking about Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion, the big three. Okay, so if you're trying to get a car loan, a house loan, personal loan or whatever, they're going to go to these three, the bank or, the car dealership, whatever. But none of them have government affiliations whatsoever. They're private companies that collect information from creditors, of your financial history. They sell this info to creditors. It's used to determine if you're credit worthy. So, okay, they sell this to creditors. So right away, this is a business. They have an incentive to make money. So I'm looking at this like there's so many ways that this does not have any controls over it. So they're selling it and they're publicly traded. Okay, this is the other part we want to get into. These are publicly traded companies. And I want to tell you just how well one of them has done. And also the fact that Equifax, that basically puked out everybody's private information and has caused enormous identity theft and people having their fraudulent charges on credit and just a massive dent to individuals and to the economy. Without any repercussions. I mean, they'll get brought before Senate hearings and say the usual, whatever they're supposed to say, or nothing's going to change. So, but yeah, so they determine if you're credit worthy, quote unquote credit worthy, and the part of this though is so. And I've listened to a few podcasts of people say, you know what? Like I save up my money. Like I don't use a lot of credit. If I use any credit at all, like I pay with my checks or I paid in cash. I have my vehicles paid off, and I don't buy a lot of new things, and I'm not buying things on credit, and I don't open up my wallet and have my 10 credit cards to whatever. Those people are at a disadvantage because they don't have a credit history, and it's harder for them to get loans because someone goes in, and if they want to make a house loan, even though this person's been super uber responsible with credit, with money, knows how to manage money, knows how to work, and take bank CDs out, or, you know, if they've taken, you know, investments, or they've reinvested into their company, you know, if they're you know, small, if they have like a side business of accounting or whatever it is, or lawn mowing or whatever, none of that gets looked at. None of it. They don't care. They don't care unless you've taken out credit, unless you have a credit profile and you're paying your credit bills and stuff like that. You're not showing up very prevalently on these, and your score is going to be lower, which totally doesn't make sense. So you can be somebody out there who has 15 credit cards, and let's say you've paid your credit cards, and you know, you have a vehicle on credit, a new expensive vehicle that's probably beyond your means, but you're making your payments. You have an expensive home, and I mean anything that's super susceptible to an economic downturn could just destroy you, could wipe you out. On a credit report, you might look awesome because you use credit and you've been credit responsible. That's isolated out of a context of a complete economic collapse, like in 2008 or 2001, which I guess wouldn't be a complete economic collapse, but an economic collapse. Those people are going to get killed. So this is so much garbage. So again, the default for these three major credit companies, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion, it's open, meaning right now people can go in and obtain your credit from these companies. Now you can go in, I think, once a year and get your credit. It's under annualcreditreport.com. You can get your free credit report. So there's two things here. One is we hear about the credit numbers, like, you know, the 680 to the 800, and, you know, like, here's your desired range or whatever, and they take the 3 and they average them. And that's one thing. And there's another thing called just a credit report that doesn't have the scores. And that credit report that doesn't have the scores can be obtained by employers. And what they'll do is they'll also look at, like, have you defaulted on a mortgage? You know, have you suddenly opened up a lot of credit, which might show that, you know, you're trying, you know, you might have some fiscal difficulties. This is becoming more and more of the hiring process, and I don't like it. I don't think there's a place for it. You know, and they can say, well, if people are handling money, we need to know how they handle money in their personal life. Well, I think those are almost two different things. And, you know, the fact is, if you have a question about how they are managing money and you put them into a position where they're managing money, then watch them or train them or have an internal audit process on them. Because I don't necessarily think that those two things translate over to each other. So under the Fair Credit Reporting Act, the three major credit reporting agencies are required to offer consumers one free credit report a year through annualcreditreport.com. So, yeah. And again, they'll typically track your banking history, employment, your rental history, utility payments, things like that. So here's the deal. Here's what people maybe don't know. Like, you can go for a job application. You know, you're applying for a job, and they're like, hey, we want to look at your credit history too, which never used to happen. Now they do it kind of all the time. And it's kind of ridiculous even for some of these positions. Like, why do you need to look at my credit history? Because I'm going to be doing this. But they do it because they want to, they're using this as a gauge to check your responsibility over time. Did you default on a house or something like that? It's completely devoid of context. Okay. That's the other, they don't know the context of that situation. And a lot of those people who are making these judgment calls or whatever, you know, like, well, you've had bad credit, so we're not going to bring you into the company because you haven't shown responsibility. Like, you defaulted on a house. So if we put you on a big project, and it's like, well, yeah, I defaulted on a house at the same time, like, I was sick. And, you know, I was also, you know, had, you know, student loan issues, or I was putting myself through school. I mean, you don't know. I mean, so they just say, you know, well, sorry, the thing is, though, you have to sign off. You have to sign off and say, I give you permission to look at my credit report. They can't get the score, but they can get your credit history. So they could pull up a bankruptcy or other things. Where this really hits you hard is if you've had identity theft. If you've been the victim of identity theft and now you've had to shut down a lot of things, and so someone is looking at this like, what in the hell? And it's like, you've got to preface this by saying, I was a victim of identity theft. My credit is going to look all over the place because I've been spending thousands of dollars and working with my, coverage. A lot of us have coverage. I think I do, where your insurance company helps you out and things like that. But it's such a mess. And a lot of times after identity theft, people lock their credit. So you have the choice. You can lock your credit. So let's get right there. You can lock your credit at any of these. And it costs a total of about $30 to lock your credit. Okay. That's right now. It costs like $30 total. And first of all, you have to get a hold of all of these and say, like, I want my credit locked. So they'll lock your credit. Now, the thing is, to unlock your credit, that's a fee also. So it can be anywhere from $10 and up to unlock your credit. So if you go to a car dealership and you're going to buy a car and they're going to check your credit, you can ask, which credit are you going to check? Equifax? Are you going to do, Experian or TransUnion? They might tell you which one, or they might say all three. Well, if it's all three, you got to unlock all three. That's $30 at least. And then you have to relock them. So you have to pay to relock these. So if you get in this where you're locking and unlocking, and this will really hit you hard if you're applying for a job. Okay. If you're applying for a job and, different places and things, and you have to lock and unlock your credit, this could end up being hundreds of dollars a year that you're putting into this while you're seeking employment. So why isn't the default position for this locked? It's garbage that it's not locked. That is a complete garbage move by the government that this is not locked. And the fact that when you unlock it, that they have these fees of $10 or whatever, you should have so many free unlocks a year. And then after that, through a PIN number and whatever you do, but it should be like $5. This isn't, all this is now because this happened, this Equifax breach. Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion are making more money than ever because you have to go in and pay to lock and pay to unlock. So anytime again, if you're for rental property, for a mortgage, for car, anything that is going to have a mortgage or a loan associated with it, now even employment, you're having to go in and do this unlock and then lock again. And so here, take a look at this. So as of November 14th, 2017, TransUnion, privately, it's on the stock market, TransUnion, it was up 75.98% year to date. Up 75.98% year to date. Okay. Equifax, which again vomited out all of our personal data. Not just a little bit. They shook hands with Yahoo and said, yeah, let's both go down in flames on this. Everything got harvested. And all of us who are diligent, you protect your social security number and you do all of these things, and it doesn't matter because, this other side, hey, our firewall was made out of paper and it got burned through and we didn't even recognize it, or we recognized it. I don't know. Equifax is down to date as 11/14/2017, to date, down 7.49%. That is 7.49%. That's disgusting. General Electric is down for the year, 25% for the year is down 25%. General Electric, who makes locomotives, who makes things, airplane engines, stuff like that. Okay, General Electric, having, an off year. Equifax, who spills the beans, just gets, fleeced, destroyed, and turns this incredible liability for all of us. And now is in a situation to harvest money off of us for fees, to trust them to keep our data safe. Yeah, right. Okay. They're down 7.49%, which is a blip. It's nothing. It's unbelievable. I mean, I'm looking at that. I'm like 7.5. What the hell? It's like TransUnion is up. I'm like, which doesn't make really any sense to me. Although I suppose you could look and say, well, now we have all these extra fees, which people are going to have to pay. And we really don't do anything as a company. I mean, people just report stuff into us. And it's not like you have to have huge office buildings and, you know, a lot of this is automated and stuff like that. But Equifax, I mean, you have your corporate, your senior executives selling stock shares and deemed that that's okay. To me, it's not okay, but you know, right after they're aware of this, and just this massive, you know, I can't get over it. 7.49%. I mean, I would look at that and say that should be down like 80%. Like they should be on survival. Like it should be the heartbeat monitor on them. You know, the drip IV. And I mean, there's no pain. There's no pain in these companies. I mean, these people go on, they get the paychecks and whatever, and it's just crazy. So, a big thing though. Okay. So, how do I want to take this here? So here's the thing with employers. So, you know, you can deny with your employer. You can say, no, you know, I'm not going to sign off and give you my access to my credit report. Well, what do you think is going to happen? I mean, if there's obviously other people applying for the job and you're not willing to do this, it's going to be negative against you. You're not going to get the job flat out. It's just not going to happen. So you are damned if you do, damned if you don't, because if you have been a victim of the Equifax and, you know, the whole mess there, and if you have been the victim of identity theft, not even once, but twice or whatever, or even if you are very responsible and haven't used a lot of credit. I mean, back in my lawnmower cash days, I mean, the company was paying me, you know, in a personal, you know, check, you know, out of the, one of the property, you know, one of the guys that lived in one of these big, larger homes and stuff like that. But, it's just insane. It's absolutely insane. So let me go through. Dun, 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 dun. Oh, okay. So, TransUnion and Equifax, Equifax. I don't want to make it sound like they got away scot-free, because they didn't. They definitely got hammered with a feather of a punishment. TransUnion and Equifax misled customers about credit scores. They misled the government. This article was by Aaron Smith of CNN, and saying that TransUnion and Equifax had to pay a total of $17.6 million in restitution and $5.5 million in penalties. The companies offered credit scores for free, or a limited reduction in their enrollment programs to protect your information on a monthly paid basis. So here's what they did. Here's what they did. Here's where this penalty came from. Okay, this wasn't because of the breach. This was what they were saying. Hey, we'll charge you like $1 a month, and to be in our program, or we'll monitor your credit. And by the way, like it'll renew forever. It's automatic, and you'll be charged $1 a month ongoing, and that's just the way it is. So all of a sudden people will be like, what's this dollar? Like I'm getting charged $1 and $1 and $1, so it's $12 a year, to basically like just to have them do their job to protect your data. So, you know, it was absolute garbage, and they weren't told this. They weren't disclosed this information. About 700,000 TransUnion customers were impacted, you know, by this. But anyway, you're just slime. I am so sick of that. So absolutely sick. So what am I going to do? So what's the Safety Act going to do? What do I think you should do? Okay. So, one is, I personally, I don't need to have my data. I don't need to have my stuff unlocked. And if I do, it's going to be very rare. So, you know, I'm not taking out a mortgage. I'm not taking out a car loan and all those things. So I'm in a position. I'm a little bit older. I just had my 46th birthday. So we're not in a position where we have to kind of do these things. So, I am going to go in and do a lock, which is a pain. And I know it's going to suck. And then, the reality though is I'm going to have to be very vigilant of that down the road in case I forget about it and I do go for any type of loan or any, take out additional credit card or something like that. I don't know. And I don't even know, like for my girls, like as they go into college, and is this going to have any impact? And I just don't know. And I've never been asked for it. I mean, I do a number of consulting things and expert witness stuff, and I don't know if having credit locked has any impact on that or whatever, but too bad. Credit's being locked. It's a good step to take for me. Now, but if you're young and so I guess by that default, I'm not young, but if you're applying for a job, you're in your 20s and something like that, and you're going to be getting a car, a mortgage and stuff like this and applying for jobs, this is a real hassle to lock and unlock. And if you ask like a car company, like which of these rating scores are the companies you're going to look at, like Experian or Equifax or TransUnion? And they were like, oh, we don't know. Well, usually they do know. They kind of don't look at all three. They might look at just one. And I think you just say, like, I lock my stuff as a protective measure, and I'm willing to unlock it so you can go in and check it. But if you're just going to do the one, let me unlock the one and save a little bit of money. So, but again, on the other side, I mean, they'll probably be like, oh, is he like trying to protect something? Like doesn't want to see, but I mean, come on. So, yeah, I think you should lock, go to valuepenguin.com, kind of know what you're in for. And there is no way in the world that these three companies, which are not government companies, I don't think there's a need for these anymore. They are just manipulating in the fact that they're publicly traded. It's just sickening. It is absolutely sickening. And the fact that the penalties that come down should be absolutely harsh. I mean, it should be like, what was it in the record industry a few years ago, like, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago, I remember getting a check for like $35 or something because, one of the record companies overcharged on whatever. I mean, right here, like every American citizen should be getting a check for like $100 from the big three of saying like, we're sorry. And that doesn't even cover anything. But I mean, this whole thing of like, everybody keeps their jobs and everything just goes on as normal. And by the way, we're going to charge you fees to lock your account, and every time you unlock it, and then every time you relock it, there's additional fees, which we didn't have before. It's new income for us. Yay, because we suck so bad. And you have no other choice. And if this is the way you want to play the game, if you want to be employed, if you want to have a mortgage, guess what? It's for us. Yay. I mean, it's horrible. It's horrible. It's greed. I'm sorry for beating the mic here, but it's greed. It's irresponsibility. It's sickening for me. But I'm telling you, check out valuepenguin.com. I have no interest in Value Penguin at all as a disclosure, but I did so you know what you're in for, and then understand those three reporting agencies. Again, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion, those will be the three that you'll want to put the lock on. I think you need to do that. Identity theft is horrible. I've known people who have gone through that. Not that it still can't happen to you. This decreases the likelihood of something like that happening to you. You do not want to put yourself through identity theft. It is god awful for you to fight back from that. So decrease your chances of doing that. And unfortunately, we are just in a world where you cannot accept that your data is going to be protected in these agencies. And I think you've got to take every measure you can. And even with that said, I'm like, okay, so Equifax, you like lock this, but I don't understand how that lock would have had any impact on this information really being harvested, because if the hackers got into your system, whether it was locked or not, I don't get. I mean, I can see where someone would apply for something under your name and it would probably thwart identity theft, but I don't see where this has anything to do with a more robust security system. So